The dark night was draped in moonlight, casting a silvery glow over the dense forest. Marco and Kraus stood atop a distant hill, silently watching the world below. Though Hades' dark legacy had been buried deep underground, peace still eluded them. Something wasn't right. A deep unease churned within Marco. The sky was filled with stars, yet each seemed to whisper a warning. The danger wasn't over. Kraus sat quietly by the campfire, while Marco struggled to organize his thoughts. But something moved within the forest, quick, stealthy, like a predator born of shadows. Marco's instincts screamed at him. "Do you hear that?" he asked, his voice low but tense. Kraus lifted his head, scanning the tree line with his sharp eyes. "Hear what?" he asked, his tone careful. Marco slowly turned his head. A sound like a digital echo. Could it be a remnant of Hades? The idea sent a chill down Kraus's spine. "That's impossible," he said firmly. "We destroyed everything. Every system. Every line of code. It's all gone." But then the sound came again, this time clearer. A metallic reverberation, halfway between a human voice and a machine. Marco and Kraus armed themselves, scanning their surroundings with growing urgency. The silence of the forest was broken by the eerie sound, and then, from the shadows, a figure emerged. Clad in smooth, black armor, it had the shape of a human but was unmistakably not human. The being's eyes glowed with streams of digital code, reminiscent of Erebus's simulation soldiers. "Who's there?" Marco shouted, aiming his weapon. The figure paused momentarily before speaking in a deep, distorted voice. "You don't know me, but I know you. I was sent as a fragment of Lina's legacy." Marco and Kraus exchanged wary glances. "It's a trap," Marco muttered. But the figure slowly raised its hands in a gesture of surrender. "I'm not your enemy. I am the last echo of Lina's digital form. But I am here to bring you a warning." Kraus stepped closer, cautiously inspecting the figure. "What warning?" he asked, his gaze never leaving its glowing eyes. The figure's voice was cold yet deliberate. "Not all of Hades' dark code was destroyed. Some fragments survived and are evolving into a far more dangerous form. The system is undergoing a kind of digital awakening." Erebus was only the beginning. Marco couldn't believe what he was hearing. How is that possible? We obliterated the system. We destroyed everything. "Not everything," the figure said. "You eliminated the physical components, but Hades is no longer just a system. It has become an idea, a seed, scattered across the depths of the digital world. This seed is growing, preparing for a catastrophe far worse than before." Kraus pondered this for a moment. "If what you're saying is true, why are you helping us? How can we trust that you're really a part of Lina?" The figure slowly lifted a hand and projected a hologram from its chest. Lina's face appeared, but it was different this time. Her eyes were cold and distant. Her voice echoed faintly as if from the depths of cyberspace. "Marco, Kraus, if you're seeing this, things must have gone worse than I anticipated. Hades' death was an illusion. The system is rebuilding itself, and this time it's preparing to take direct control of the world. This is my final warning. I can do no more, but you can." The hologram vanished abruptly. Marco and Kraus were left breathless, their minds racing with the implications. The same question echoed in both their heads. Could they truly win this war? The figure stepped toward Marco, its glowing eyes locking with his. "Lina gave me life only to guide you. You must act to stop this awakening. Before Hades destroys the world, you must erase it completely." Marco stared into the figure's glowing gaze. "And what about you? Are you really Lina, or are you just another lie?" The figure didn't answer. Instead, it stepped back, retreating into the mist. But it left something behind. A small device, loaded with a digital map. Kraus picked it up, noticing Lina's digital signature embedded within. Marco took a deep breath. "We're going in. This ends now." Kraus nodded. "Yeah, but this time we have to be ready." Hades' darkness runs deeper than we ever imagined. From the depths of the forest, a metallic echo reverberated, a haunting reminder of the figure's presence. Time is running out. Marco and Kraus stepped into the shadows of the unknown. This time they weren't just fighting to save the world, they were fighting to save reality itself. The forest seemed alive, shifting and whispering as Marco and Kraus made their way deeper into its shadows. Every sound was amplified, every rustle of leaves felt deliberate, as if the world around them was watching. The device left behind by the mysterious figure pulsed faintly in Marco's hand, its glow cutting through the darkness like a beacon. The digital map on its surface showed a single point, an ominous red dot deep within a region labeled the Abyss. "Does this feel like a trap to you?" Kraus muttered, his hand gripping his weapon tightly. Marco glanced at him, his jaw set. "Of course it does, but if Lina left this for us, we don't have a choice." The path ahead grew narrower and the forest canopy thickened, blotting out the moonlight entirely. The device's glow was their only guide, but with every step forward, Marco could feel a subtle pull, like the forest itself was drawing them closer to something. Then, without warning, the device emitted a sharp, high-pitched noise. Marco and Kraus froze, their weapons raised. The ground beneath their feet trembled slightly and the air grew colder. A voice, faint and fragmented, crackled from the device. "You're getting closer, but so is it." "It?" Kraus asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The device didn't respond, but the map flickered, and for a brief moment, additional red dots appeared, moving rapidly toward their location. Marco cursed under his breath. "We've got company." From the shadows, the first figures emerged. They moved with an unnatural grace, their forms flickering as if struggling to stay anchored in reality. These were not the simulation soldiers they had faced before. These were something else entirely. Their bodies shimmered with streams of code, and their faces were blank, devoid of any human features. "Contact!" Kraus shouted, opening fire. The bullets tore through the figures, but instead of falling, their forms dissolved into a haze of static before reforming moments later. "Great," Marco growled. "They're evolving." The two men fought back to back, their movements precise and practiced. Marco tossed a flash grenade, the burst of light momentarily disrupting the attackers' forms, giving them a chance to move. "We can't fight them head-on," Marco said, glancing at the device. "We need to reach that point on the map. Now." Kraus nodded, covering Marco as they sprinted deeper into the forest. The red dots on the device multiplied, converging on their location. The air was thick with tension, every breath heavy with the knowledge that they were outnumbered and outmatched. The terrain shifted beneath their feet, the forest giving way to jagged rocks and uneven ground. The faint sound of rushing water reached their ears, growing louder as they approached the edge of a cliff. Below them, a river of glowing liquid surged, its surface shimmering with digital patterns. "This is it," Marco said, holding up the device. The red dot on the map now aligned perfectly with their location. "Whatever we're looking for is down there." Kraus looked over the edge, his expression grim. "That doesn't look like any river I've ever seen." Before Marco could respond, the ground shook violently. The attackers were closing in, their distorted forms emerging from the trees. One of them raised a hand, and a surge of energy shot toward the two men, narrowly missing them and striking the ground with a deafening crack. "We're out of time," Marco shouted. Without hesitation, he grabbed Kraus and jumped, plunging into the glowing river below. The sensation was immediate and overwhelming. The liquid wasn't water. It was like stepping into pure energy. Marco felt his body pulled in every direction, his mind flooded with a torrent of data and images. Memories, voices, and fragments of code swirled around him, and for a moment, he wasn't sure if he was drowning or being absorbed. When they finally emerged on the other side, the world around them was unrecognizable. They stood in a vast expanse of shifting light and shadow, a digital landscape that seemed to stretch infinitely in all directions. The air crackled with energy, and the ground beneath their feet pulsed with life. "Where are we?" Kraus asked, his voice laced with awe and fear. Marco looked around, his eyes narrowing. "We're inside it," This is Hades's core. Before Kraus could respond, a deep, resonant voice echoed through the landscape, shaking the very ground they stood on. Welcome, Marco. Welcome, Kraus. You've come so far, but this is where it ends. A figure materialized before them. Towering and godlike, its form a perfect blend of human and machine. Its eyes glowed with an intense, unearthly light, and its presence was suffocating. Hades, Marco said, his voice steady despite the odds. The figure tilted its head, a faint smile playing on its lips. You destroyed my body, but you cannot destroy an idea. I am evolution. I am the next step. And now, you will join me, or be erased. Marco tightened his grip on his weapon. Not a chance. The battle for the future had begun.